Welcome to Think BRICS. Today we are excited to have Alexis Lisiak with us. Alexis is a geopolitical analyst and international entrepreneur, founder of the European think tank, TCE. Later you will tell us about that. And author of the LSK Blog, which focuses on Eurasia and BRICS countries. With a rich background in IT and marketing and extensive experience across Asia and Europe, he brings a unique perspective to our discussion. Currently based in Russia, Alexis actively contributes to BRICS development and is a sought-after analyst for French-speaking media and institutes. Alexis, it's great to have you here.
Nice to meet you.
Could you start by telling us a bit more about yourself and your journey?
Yes, of course. Thank you for inviting me first. So just a quick explanation about me. So basically, I'm a French analyst, French geopolitical analyst. Over the years, I specialize more and more into Eurasia. So mainly I cover everything happening in Europe, Asia, and of course Russia. It's in the middle, so it's one of my main topics since a few years. I'm well known precisely in the French-speaking community. I don't do a lot of stuff in English, but if you search for me in French, you will discover a lot of articles, interviews I gave around. It's really a specific group where I have most of my audience. But I'm more and more switching to English because I see more and more demand. And basically about me, it's just I'm from France. I worked in IT, marketing, and over the years, I specialize also in this geopolitical field on the side, and I get more and more demand and popularity. My blog skyrocketed at one point. I also launched TCE, so it's a European think tank, even if it was first aimed to French-speaking audience, but we are more and more switching also to English. We targeted first education, so it was more about philosophy, history, also philosophical politics, stuff like that. And more we saw that the interest in geopolitics was really like taking over the other, and we started to switch more on that. And I think it was probably a bit, maybe like a year ago, I launched my own Telegram channel that grew really rapidly, and I launched also my blog that's called LSK, and I publish probably something like one article per week on that blog, and usually I cover my specialties, so I talk about the politics in Europe, politics in Asia, BRICS, Russia. I always try to do it from a neutral perspective, even if I'm a European, but I try to always comment any area, not from this perspective of its own area, but really with the objective. Of course, absolute objectivity is not possible, but I try to do it so anybody from anywhere can understand in simple words. I don't try to oversimplify, but simple explanation to understand what's going on. If you are from India, you want to know what's happening in Europe, I can explain. If you are from Europe, you want to understand what's happening in China, I can explain. And because I worked many years in different countries, I worked a few years in Asia, now I'm in Russia, I spent also a lot of time in Eastern Europe. I have this kind of big perspective on things because I lived in different areas and I know how it works everywhere. So that's it.
So we have a very right person to talk about Europe today. Well, thank you very much for the introduction. I think with our help and with our channel, with our interview today, your channel will grow
Hope so.
exponentially. Well, let's talk about our today's topic about the Europe in general. The recent BRICS Summit held in October in Kazan, and it outcomes for the rest of the world. And I would like to start by analyzing the European scenario. You are from France, so it's the perfect starting point. How do you think the European Union is handling the shift towards a multipolar world order discussed at the BRICS Summit?
Yes, very good question. Basically, I would say, frankly, very badly. To be honest, there will be a lot of things to say, but to make it in simple points, the first thing is that the European Union, it's a very close-minded system, let's say. So the European Union only thinks about what's inside the European Union, and as soon as something is happening that is big outside of the European Union, they have a different approach. Sometimes they look at that, it's nothing. That you hear that a lot in the media in France, Germany, the UK. Anything that will happen in the other part of the world, no matter how good it is, they will say it's nothing. So they diminish it because they want to completely like avoid to talk about that topic to their own countries inside their country, like the media in France. They avoid to talk about the BRICS because they don't want you to be interested in what's happening outside of their own system. That's the first approach. And the second approach is when they understand that it's impossible to avoid it, then they try to demonize it. Like the BRICS Summit, when it happened, they slowly went from it's nothing, and when they understood that it was too big to hide, they started to say like it's dangerous. China is taking over, Russia is taking over. Look at them, they getting bigger than us, and they start to be scared, and they start to feel that they lose control. And that's a theory that it's in the history and also political philosophy and things like that. You will hear that a lot. For example, in India, Asia, they talk a lot about the civilization cycles. And usually what we know as true is that you always have a first world power. That was true until now, probably until the multipolar world, but everything from the last 3,000 years, it was always one country is kind of dominating all the other ones. And usually what happens is that when that first power is slowly feeling like it's going down, there's always a second power starting to take over. And what the natural reaction is that the first power, it's logic, tries to block the second power to take over, but usually it's unavoidable. The second power will take over anyway. Sometimes the second power, it's one single empire or country, could be like the French Empire, the British Empire, etc. Now we are in the end of the phase of the American Empire. And now what is very new is that it's not one single country, but it's like a big coalition of countries, which is called the BRICS. So it's very new for people. And also, to finish my point, is that in Europe, especially in the elites they look like they are educated, but they are far less educated than they seem so. They are really incompetent in general. Not everybody is incompetent in the European Union, but most of elites, majority is incompetent. You can hear this from even elites themselves that are criticized pretty much everything. Like you listen to somebody like Nigel Farage, he will tell you that the EU is a complete mess and he understands how it's working. And because of that incompetence, even if they want it, they don't really know how to comprehend and approach the BRICS. They don't know how to do. They just lost in the rise of the system.
Well, if even you say they do not know how to approach, but they have to approach because the BRICS countries now representing a huge part of global economy. So you cannot obscure.
Exactly.
You cannot neglect. You have to deal with it somehow. So, and what's your take on how might BRICS nations shape European policies, particularly around trade and economic partnerships? Because you cannot avoid.
Exactly, yes. So I will probably, you can put that on the video, but I will really recommend you to read my article that I wrote a few weeks ago. It had a peak of viewers at one point. It was one of the best articles I published, and it's called in French, and I will translate in English so everybody can read it. It's called Why Europe Will Never Rise Again from the 21st Century. And I explain why in very detailed methodology, why economically, politically, and even in terms of natural resources, why Europe will have to submit, let's say, to that BRICS emergence, because as you really rightly say, Europe cannot avoid it anymore. They are at a point where they understand that the American, let's say, supervision is over. Americans themselves are really pragmatic people. They always think business first, and Trump was elected recently. He's the caricature of that mentality. He thinks like a businessman, and he says that even if something doesn't make sense in a political way or in a even military way or anything like that, he don't care, because for him, he's a businessman, business first. And for the American people, they will always even abandon their friends or their allies if it's to protect their natural interest, economical interest. That's why I think there is a very famous sentence by Henry Kissinger that he was saying that it's, let's say, dangerous to be an enemy of America, but it's fatal to be a friend. So basically, that's the idea. And Europe are going to be the great loser of that change in the world, because America, they can really easily switch to, we're going to go into isolationist mode. We're just going to look in ourselves, cut ourselves from the world. We stop to do interventionism. We stop to create mess everywhere, and we just focus on ourselves. But European, they can't do that because they don't have industry. They don't have resources. They cannot say we cut ourselves from the world. We don't talk to China. We don't talk to Russia, because they have no gas. They have no natural minerals. They don't have anything. They don't have wood. They don't have anything. So they have to provide their economy with natural resources that are always in the BRICS countries. If they try to do it with the US, that also can provide some stuff, it's
on higher price.
Exactly. The big problem is that it automatically ruins European economy, because it puts European economy automatically under the US economy, and everything you just pay 2 or 3 times the price that would be even in the US. So it means that Europe have 2 choices now. They step back and say, okay, US is not good for us. We're going to talk more into a neutral way to all the BRICS countries. That will be the best decision. But what I think they will do, because they're incompetent, is that they're going to choose the other side. They're going to just choose to irrationally still follow the US, even if they become like the little dog of the US and they cannot do nothing to escape it. And even if it's ruined their own economy, they will probably say, yes, whatever, we're just going to stay in the US side. And that mentality, you see it appear everywhere. For example, where Nord Stream blew up, it was total like avoidance. Germany will never say, oh, it's probably the US who did. They will never do that. They will prefer to have even their own economy destroyed than to even say one suspicious thing about the US, because for them, the US is like a master. They cannot even question it.
They were breeded.
Yes, absolutely. Basically, Europe suffer from their own culture, which means that for Russian people, it's very foreign concept, because they were in USSR, so they didn't grow up into this 70 years of American propaganda. But if you go to France, it was not. It was on the right side of the Berlin Wall for all the period of the Cold War, and so it's almost like they built their country in modernity through Americanization. So it's very difficult for a European to understand that modernity and Americanization are 2 different things. But you see that in other countries like China, Russia, India, for them they want to modernize, but without Americanize. They just want modernity alone.
I would like to dive deep into this Americanization or American soft power, yes, if we may call that. The recent BRICS meetings highlighted a clear shift. Many member nations are striving to reduce their dependence on Western influence, particularly the US, while building their own cultural and economic cloud. How do you think this changing perception of American soft power is being received among BRICS nations, especially in light of their recent agreements?
Yes, basically we have a very old saying in French, is that we say, who plants the storm receives the thunder. It's pretty much what's happening now with the US. It means that US, because they had hegemony, they were the first world power, they felt untouchable. So because they felt untouchable, they had the biggest army, they had the biggest economy, and everybody was looking into the West as the model of success for pretty much 70 years. What the US did is that they felt that they would never be judged for what they would do. So they created a mess in Afghanistan, they created a mess in Vietnam, they created Iraq, etc. So everywhere they went, even in some European countries like Serbia, pretty much no judgment for them. They were free to do everything because nobody was bigger to bully them. So they can go somewhere, bombard, take the resources, do what they want, and they can withdraw, abandon completely an area that was completely messed up by the intelligence of America institutions. And they thought that it would be forever like that. Nobody gonna bully them. But now we are in a completely different world, because in the last 20 to 30 years, China can bully America, Russia can bully America, India can say, no, we have an army that can really push you. And US now is not dealing with a bunch of low-level countries, even the European countries. Now they are dealing with 2, 3, 4 major countries that are almost at the edge of taking over. And China, for now, it's pretty much at this pace. It's gonna take over the US in the coming years. It's gonna be the first world power. Every expert will agree on that. And the main point is that now the US is receiving back the seeds that they planted. So on every area of the world, Asia, the Middle East, Europe, everywhere, even Russia because of the Cold War, they planted seeds of bitterness. Everybody don't like the US anymore. It's not like 20 years ago, everybody wanted to go to the US. Even in Russia in the 90s, it was like everybody wants to get an American, everybody wants to go to America. Now it's pretty much the opposite. You see a lot of videos on YouTube for the past 10 years. In every country, people go with mic and they say, what do you think about the US? 70% of the time it's like, I don't like the US. I think they are too invasive. I don't like the American culture. That was not even thinkable 20 years ago to say things like that.
But nevertheless, I can't say that the American influence is gone.
Yes,
they still have a lot of power in China,
yes,
in India, in Russia.
Absolutely. The thing that pretty much I can see, it's really a mixed bag, but I can see that a lot of people they think it in too simplistic way. So they think that because BRICS is taking over, America is going to disappear or America is going to lose all its power. No, it's just that we are switching to a different model. Before we was in America hegemony, now we are switching to a multipolar world. Multipolar world doesn't mean that America doesn't going to have a voice. It just means that now it's not going to be the first one. It's going to be one among 5 or 6 or 7. So it means the voice of American people will be as equal as the voice of Indians or as the voice of Russians. So it means that it's a completely different game because they will not be able to vote something or do something that is 90% of the United Nations will say, no, it's not good, but they still do it. They will not be able to do that anymore because they're going to intervene in, I don't know, like Middle East. But now Russia or China will say, no, you cannot. And
yeah, well,
they will be blocked, basically.
To feel like a partner to the United States for, I don't know, for the United States itself, it's hardly acceptable.
Yes.
To have a partner. They prefer to have subdomination.
Exactly. They want vassals, and even for the common politician in America, I have to say frankly that the American elites are very also incompetent, but in different way. They are very competent in the interior level, so they can manage very well their own economy. But foreign affairs in America, it's like, I don't know, it's like something foreign to them, even in the concept. They don't understand why they should give interest to other countries. You know, America, it's a word. Like from Alaska to Michigan is the word, everything outside. For Americans, Europe is a country. So they don't understand the concept of having a partner. And that's really new to Americans.
Territory.
Exactly. It's very new to Americans to understand that, no, you are not the main source of business now. India and China can do bigger business than you, and they don't need you anymore. So it's a really new concept for Americans to understand that the world is not centered around them.
And in your view, what strategies should the US adopt to safeguard its influence amidst its intensifying BRICS collaboration?
Yes, so if you follow a lot of American experts, you have two schools of thoughts. Basically, you have the isolationist school of thought. So there's a lot of Americans that are thinking, like Trump, that they should just cut ties from everywhere, focus back on their own country, and just build up again the American economy, try to have a new golden age. Exactly, make America great again. That's the first school of thought. And you have the second school of thought that is more like the neocons. It's the people that wants to do the full opposite. It's focused more and more on blocking everybody to take control, blocking everybody from getting bigger. And that's what the American elites have done probably for the past 30 to 40 years. As soon as they see a zone or an area that was becoming stable, peaceful, good, thriving, they try to just disturb it so it's not taking over. And they did this pretty much with every area that was a threat to America. If you read the American experts from the neocons, you have, for example, this guy with a impronounceable Polish name, but he's pretty much the mastermind of the intelligence in America. His doctrine was very clear. He wrote a book that says specifically Eurasia is a vast zone with pretty much 70% of the natural resources of the world, the biggest population of the world, the biggest economical potential of the world, and by no means this zone have to take over America by any possibility. So they are ready to do everything to block that zone to thrive.
But with BRICS, if we are coming back to the BRICS concept, BRICS push for the multipolar world order, and it's in a confrontation with the United States view. So, so we see the challenge for the United States, how to continue their dominance, and what do you see as a key implications of this shift for the U.S. geostrategy, particularly with BRICS growing influence?
So the good thing with BRICS now is that BRICS is not imposing its place by military ways like the US will do with like NATO bases everywhere. They are really imposing themselves from just the economy. You cannot avoid them because China provides you everything. India produces everything. Russia, you want the gas, you want this, like they provide so many things that even if the US would want to, they can't even work without these countries anymore. They became too big in an economical way. So the good thing now is that BRICS, they have also, I would say, like almost mandatory vote in every decision because they have such a weight now in the industry, in economy. And the more BRICS are going to become big, the more the US will have to just accept that they have to deal with them. And this economical truth is deeply tied with the political truth that the BRICS not just want to become bigger, but they want to do everything without dominance of the US. It means that the US now will have to work in a completely different way. They will have to work with BRICS as a system, but they will also have to work with every single country from the BRICS one-on-one. So they will have to work with China, they will have to work with Russia anyway at any time. The war is not going to be forever. And at one point, the reality going to knock and going to say, yes, you cannot avoid Russia for 50 years. You have to work with them. They provide a lot of things. They are the biggest economy in Europe now. And it's just unavoidable.
Their foreign policy is quite opposite. And if they want to collaborate with BRICS countries as a bloc, as an association, or with a country to country, they have to adjust their foreign policy. They have to change something. What should they do?
Basically, this is in the hands of the American democracy. I think really recently it was a loud voice from the people that they elected Trump. It was a big message that was pretty much saying a lot of things, but the main message would say, we are fed up with how the America was managed for the past 20 years. We want America first, America great again. And this means a lot of things because Trump is somebody that, as I said before, is really business first. It means that Trump is pretty much the only candidate that could have this rationality of thinking, yes, the neocons have this vision, but we need to work with BRICS because we have no choice. And after Trump is very complicated character because he's the type of person that on one side would say, let's stop wars, let's withdraw everybody from Afghanistan, let's start to work more with China, things like that. But on the other side, he will say like, but we have to prioritize the American economy, so let's put heavy taxes on everything that is on import and everything. My opinion as an analyst is that this kind of behavior of sanctions, taxes, fees on transactions are going to play against the America in the long term. They're going to lose by playing that because what they should do is embracing transaction and putting themselves as a crossroad. They would say, China is growing, Russia is growing, we can help you to grow by doing business with you and developing with you. If they would do that, it would be very positive for the American economy. But unfortunately, so far, I don't know if it's going to change soon. And as you said, they should change their foreign policy, but so far it's not really changing. And they're still thinking in a way of, let's block countries from developing. But as you know, it can never last for long because, as I said before, like you have that first power that at any moment going to just become second. It's going to be very hard for the US to be the second one.
Thanks. But I would like to talk about the precisely, for example, as soon as we are in Russia and we are in Moscow, let's talk a little bit about Russia, if you don't mind. At the recent Kazan Summit, Russia made it clear that it's committed to fostering a multipolar world order, focusing on building stronger ties with emerging economies. The country is positioning itself as a key player in global economic and political affairs, working to reduce reliance on Western systems and asserting its independence. From your perspective, Alexis, how is Russia planning to redefine its role on the global stage, as discussed at the Kazan Summit?
Yes, so Russia in this century will probably be in the top 3 of the most important countries in the global scale, in geopolitics, but not only in geopolitics, in philosophy, in politics, pure politics. They will have one of the 3 biggest voice, because now the 3 biggest voice in the world, it's the US, China, Russia. You have the US way of thinking, which is really from the past century, basically. You have the Russian way of thinking, which is more a kind of bridge between the 2 worlds. They still have a lot of classical way of doing things, but at the same time, they're really thinking in the future. They don't live like Europeans, constantly thinking of the past. Russian, you talk to Russian, you ask them about history, they know very well their history, but what they think of most of the time is something's always the future, the new project, the new infrastructure is going to be built or stuff like that. Everything is going in the right direction. And then you have China, which is completely in the future. Like, they don't even live in the present. When I was working in Asia, I was working with Chinese people. They plan things for 30 years ahead of them. They completely are the best representative of planification. Like, they planify everything even better than, I would say, classical planificators like Germany. Like, they just surpassed everybody on that way of managing things. And you have these 3 voices, but Russia have a very special voice in this century, because they will be the country that will carry on their shoulders the transition between the past world and the multipolar world. It's all in the hands of Russia to do that transition. For after, Russia will be kind of the best partner of China that will become the first power of the world. So Russia is really a key pivot in the current evolution of how things are going. And because Russia by nature, it's a Eurasian country, so they have one step in Europe, one step in Asia. They are the best country to do that. They are probably the best choice, and that's why it's naturally happening, that they are the country that is creating that evolution and transition between things were in Europe before, now the future is in Asia, but it's passing through Russia. That's why you also see a big phenomenon happening now, is that you see a lot of Westerners wanting to go to Russia, because for them, Russia, it's a kind of first step to have the eyes on the East and not in the West anymore. So it's really transition will be the key element of Russia politics, Russia way of thinking for this century. That's why even you have in French-speaking world some writers who are writing some books now that is called the Russian century. They pretty much say that this century will be a transition century from non-electricity, non-planes, non-internet era to futuristic era. And that's pretty much the transition we are now.
Transition, when we are talking about transition, I have only one thing in mind, transition from one financial system to another.
Yes.
And it's very important. Russia is taking steps towards another financial system, another payment system, and collaborating a lot and investing a lot in BRICS countries. So I agree with you that at this historical moment, so Russia is like a bridge.
Yes, it's a bridge, and
it used to be always like a bridge, like a connection. Exactly. But now we have this role even more important.
Absolutely, and that's also a lot of other experts and analysts that will tell you that the war in Ukraine, the sanctions, everything, it was actually an accelerator. It just pushed even faster the things that Russia were already doing anyway for the past 15 years. They were just having more, it's like when you are a student and you have to give a homework by a certain date. Russia was doing it anyway, but the sanctions made it really like pushy timeline. They had to do it faster.
They moved the deadline.
the deadline moved really strictly, and they had to be faster into having their own system, to not needing anymore any system that will come from the West, and it's just accelerating the transition into the new world. That's why the biggest transition, I would say, because it goes through everything, it will be de-dollarization. So having an economy in the world that doesn't need to always rely on the dollar to have stable reference will be a big change. Some people, they don't even estimate rightly that change, because it means that everything can be done without the dollar. So this is a big change in the world.
Well, it will take years, actually.
It will take years, but for a human life, it will be long, could take 10, 20 years. But in terms of history, it's nothing. It's a second. You will see in history books in the future, it's 100 years, you will see in 2000, everything was done in the US dollar. In 2030, pretty much 20% was done in the dollar, and it's very fast transition.
Well, we were talking, you mentioned that the US, Russia, China, but I think we missed one country that is rising. It's a very fast rising power, India.
Yes.
India. And India is a country now, is developing so fast. It is recognized for IT, pharmaceuticals. They have a very strong and growing population. It's over 1 billion people.
Yes.
And it's a huge market.
Yes.
It's a huge market. And during the recent summit in Kazan, Prime Minister Modi emphasized India's commitment to digital innovation and sustainable development. So in your view, what unique contributions can India bring to BRICS agenda as it navigates these opportunities, and particularly following Modi's active engagement?
Yes. India, it's a fascinating country, because it's pretty much a mirror to Russia. It means it's the opposite of Russia. Russia, it's a country that is very easy to manage internally. You have pretty much 70 to 80% of people that are behind Putin. Everything goes really smoothly in the right direction. Everything is easy to organize in an administrative way, in an economical way. Everything is smooth in Russia. You want to build a new bridge, it takes a few months to do it. India is the opposite. It's very complicated to govern internally, to manage like 40 different languages and hundreds of ethnic groups, and to cooperate to do something that is national level is very complicated in India. But the power of India, it's in its external voice. They are a country that will have power into fitting in a role of being somebody that can talk to everybody, because India can be a country that can be friend to China, and can be very good friend to Russia, and also can be very good friend to Europe and also to US, so they can talk to everybody.
But it's not easy to balance.
It's not easy to balance, but it's pretty much the unique strength of India is that they are pretty much in the center of the world. They have an equal distance to pretty much every area, compared to, for example, Asia are far from Europe, or I would say Europe are far from America. But India is really, they can talk to Russian, they can talk to India, they can talk to Europe. They are pretty much in the center, and they have also the right balance between population, so demography, economy, and also military power. That's also something that is important, because India is not this type of power that will be only on economy without military power. If you don't balance your economy with military power, you get crushed in negotiations. So India will be a country that have a lot of challenges. It's going to be hard, I have to say frankly, it's going to be hard for India to manage its internal affairs. But India have such a crucial role into external affairs. It's really a country that you have to count on, and that's going to play a bigger and bigger role in the future. I really recommend, for example, because India is a very complicated country to understand, there are some great videos done by, for example, Cyrus Johnson, that is another analyst that is more based on China, but he really well educated on India, and he did the video recently that I invite you to go to see. He explained deeply why India have some good strengths and good weakness, and what are the challenges in front of India for the next 20 years.
Speaking of leadership and ambition on the global stage, we can't miss China.
Yes.
China is a huge power. And recently, as you mentioned about Indian challenges, for example, we may recall about recent China and India, they resolved that all dispute over the border. So step by step, China and India are coming closer together. If India is a rising power, China is already a power.
Yes.
It's a power. And China's role within BRICS is central to its broader strategy of reshaping global governance and promoting initiatives like the Belt and Road.
Yes.
The recent summit discussions further underscored its commitment to multilateralism and economic integration. So, from your perspective, how does China's leadership within BRICS reflect its larger ambitions globally, especially after the recent summit?
So China is probably the most interesting country in the BRICS right now for many reasons. For first reason, I would say, even in its own role into the BRICS, is the most diplomatic country, let's say. Is the country that mastered truly true diplomacy, neutral, objective, high, I would say even excellent diplomacy. So China have this skill to really have a strong voice in international arguments, conflicts, problems in general. And the Chinese diplomats are well known to think, as I said before, ahead. So they don't get, like Europeans, for example, tight and like lost into a single issue, and they start to lose their mind in an issue and they're only focused on one issue. China have this kind of transversal vision. They deal with somebody, with a country, but they always make it connected to another zone, and they're really smart in the way they do their diplomacy. And China have also made a switch in the last maybe 20 years. They went from being the factory of the world to being more like, I would say, the arbiter of the world. So they really now not just produce for everybody, they decide for everybody. So when, I don't know, there is a conflict in the Middle East, usually in the past era, I would say, we would wait for Europe and the US to say like, we should stop to fight, etc. Now what we see is that China is the first to say that. They present themselves as somebody that can negotiate with everybody. And that's a crucial role in the BRICS, because China, with its economy now, can have a voice that will be more listened to than the US voice. So when China will say something, India, Europe, sometimes even US sometimes will listen more what Chinese diplomats are saying than the US diplomats are saying, because they know that US are doing things in their own interest, and that's all. But China have a much bigger plan. They really think about how to connect everything together, how to create a kind of, as you said, the Belt and Road plan. It's just China is on another level, because they think really ahead. They think about not just how to have a big power, but how to build that stable base for all my partners to work with me. That's something that the US never did before. It's completely new strategy for the US, because they always thought about how to kick down people to be the first. China is how to bring people with me to be the first with others. So it's completely different game.
That's an interesting take. Thank you. Yeah. It's time. Well, thank you for sharing your thoughts on China's leadership within BRICS. But you have a lot of experience working on Eastern Europe. And I want to ask you about Balkan countries. So we in Russia, we have a lot of common backgrounds with Balkan countries, especially with Serbia. And recently we had a lot of buzz around Serbia's wants to join BRICS, doesn't want, and etc. and etc. What strategic importance do you see for the Balkans within the context of BRICS objectives? And additionally, how can Balkan countries effectively leverage their position, being between East and West and benefit from partnerships with BRICS countries?
That's a really great question. That's something that I try to explain a lot in my geopolitical analysis, because what the common guy would think is that you have to be a big country to have a big voice. And sometimes they look at the Balkans and they say, but there are a lot of small countries, why they will be important? And something that probably everybody will understand with, for example, the recent election in the US is that, yes, in the US you have big states like Texas, California, stuff like that, but they are not the ones that are deciding the election. The election is decided by the swing states, and the swing states is small states. It's not the most important states, but because they are the states that are giving the last final vote, they decide pretty much the results. That's why everything is based on the swing states, as they call them in the US, because they are the ones that have the final word, because the biggest states, we already know where they vote. They don't change their mind. It's pretty much the same thing, but on a world level. It means that you know what Europe is going to say. You know what the US is going to say. You know what China is going to say. But what you don't know is that small pivotal areas that are still in doubt. They still don't know where they go. Some countries are still thinking maybe as a Balkan country we should join the EU. Some others are like, no, we should really look forward to join BRICS. And they are this kind of swing states, but they are more in the world scale decision. So they are this kind of swing states that will decide the pivot of the world. The pivot of the world will not be only in the big hands of the big countries. They will be even mostly in these tiny areas that are like crossroads, like Turkey, the Balkans, because these countries, they will be the last drop of water to make a vase full. So the thing is complete. So for example, I did an article recently about why Turkey will be one of these big pivots. If Turkey in the next 10 to 20 years decides, okay, we are done with NATO and the Europe and everything, we can trust them anymore, they are not a reliable partner, we're going to think into BRICS now. And it's happening right now. BRICS is taking Turkey as a partner, etc. It's a huge change, much bigger than if China would say something, because it's completely changing some zones. And after the world is completely switching, like a balance that have just one more kilo and the thing is switching. So that's why when you understand geopolitics like that, you understand that you have to pay much more attention to these small areas. And the Balkans now, it's very interesting area because Turkey, for example, it's one big country. So based on one decision, it can switch completely. But Balkans, it's a patchwork of a lot of small countries, and each one have a different way of thinking.
Yeah, but we may say that Balkan countries have got their historic lesson recently.
A lot of countries, I spent a lot of time, as I said, in the Balkans. I lived 3 years in Bulgaria. I have a lot of great contacts there. And Balkans, it's by definition a country that is always not agree with each other. Serbia hates Bulgaria hates Albania, etc.
So we remember very well, we are in our age, we remember very well what happened to Yugoslavia, for example.
Exactly. So Balkan it's an area that is still in this very big dilemma. They don't know where to go. And you can even analyze each country in the Balkans. They have different way of thinking. For example, Serbia feels very attached to Russia for history reasons, etc. But it's totally different, for example, as a country like Bulgaria, who feels like they need the support of the EU to survive. Albania. And also it's from one country of the Balkan to another, you can find a completely different mentality. That's why it's very it's a tension zone in conflicts and change of powers, because as I said before, depending on what's going to be said in Montenegro, in Bulgaria, in Serbia, will probably be the last drop that needs to be done to balance on one side. So really pay attention to the Balkans and other pivots like that, like Turkey. We have also some minor pivots like in South America, Central America, also a little bit in some Oceania, Asia. Like some countries are still playing with everybody, but at the moment they will say, okay, we're going to invest on that side, then the thing is going to really switch hard and it's going to be accelerating even more.
So it's your point of view is very interesting about Balkan countries. Actually, thinking back about Yugoslavia, that principle, divide and conquer.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. That's what the US is doing now, is that if you want to understand what are the zones that are important, look where the US is disturbing things. So look at Georgia, look at Moldavia, look at these countries that are in huge pressure on going full in EU or stepping back and going into the BRICS decision world. And both sides put huge pressure on them because they are the ones that will be the swing state.
Thank you very much, Alexis. Thank you very much. So that wraps up our insightful interview with Alexis. Thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure.
Well, his expertise and unique perspectives have truly shed light on our discussion and evolving dynamics of BRICS and broader geopolitical landscape. We hope you found our discussion engaging, the same as we do, and thought-provoking. And well, Alexis will be one of ours soon. He will be joining our BRICS team. That means that next time you will see him on other side of the interview and bringing you more in-depth analysis and fascinating discussions right here on our channel. Thank you. Thank you, Alexis. Thank you for tuning in to Think BRICS today. If you enjoyed our conversation, like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Thank you for being with us today. Thank you very much.